Commander Jake Martinez was drinking his morning coffee when the alarm started screaming. He jumped up from his desk aboard the space station New Horizon, spilling the hot liquid across his reports. Outside the window, something impossible hung, in space where nothing had been just moments before. The thing was huge, bigger than any ship humans had ever built. It looked like a dark metal mountain floating in the black void, covered in strange lights that pulsed like a heartbeat. Jake had been protecting Earth's orbit for 15 years, but he had never seen anything like this. "Sir, we're getting a transmission," called out Lieutenant Gary Stone from the communications desk. His voice was shaking. "It's coming from that thing out there." Jake walked over and put his hand on the young man's shoulder. "Put it on the main screen." The view screen flickered and then showed something that made Jake's blood run cold. The creature speaking looked almost human, but wrong, in every way. Its skin was pale gray, its eyes were too large, and when it smiled, Jake could see too many teeth. "Greetings, humans of Earth," the alien said in perfect English. "I am High Commander Vex of the Galactic Hegemony. You have been selected for integration into our empire." Jake felt his heart pounding. First contact with aliens, and they were talking about integration. That didn't sound friendly. The alien continued speaking. "Your species will submit to hegemony rule immediately. You will dismantle all military weapons and prepare your population for transport to designated work colonies. You have 72 of your hours to comply." The screen went black. Jake stared at it for a long moment, trying to process what he had just heard. Work colonies. The aliens wanted to make humans into slaves. "Get me Admiral Thompson," Jake ordered. "Emergency priority." Within minutes, Jake was connected to the command center in Geneva. Admiral Lisa Thompson appeared on his screen, her face grim. She was a tough woman who had served in 3 colonial wars, but Jake could see worry in her eyes. "Jake, tell me you saw that too," she said. "Every word," Jake replied. "Admiral, that ship appeared out of nothing. No warning, no approach vector. Their technology is way beyond ours." "It gets worse," Thompson said. "We're getting reports from every human colony. Mars, Europa, Titan, all the outer settlements, they all have the same ships hanging over them. The same message." Jake felt sick. The aliens hadn't just found Earth. They had found every human world at the same time. This was planned. "What are your orders, Admiral?" Thompson was quiet for a moment. "Stand ready. I'm calling an emergency meeting of the Defense Council. We'll have an answer for these aliens soon." The next few hours passed like a nightmare. Jake watched as more alien ships appeared around Earth. They didn't attack, just waited. Like they were sure humans would give up without a fight. Reports came in from across the solar system. The alien ships were massive, each one the size of a city. Human weapons probably couldn't even scratch them. But that wasn't what worried Jake the most. Dr. Alex Carter, Earth's best expert on alien life, sent a message to all military commanders. He had been studying the alien transmission, breaking down every piece of data hidden in their signal. "The pattern is always the same," Carter explained over the video link. "The hegemony has done this to over 10,000 different species. They show up, make demands, and every single species surrenders. Everyone." Jake thought about that. 10,000 species, all giving up without a fight. It made sense. The aliens were clearly more advanced. Their ships were bigger, their technology better. Any reasonable species would surrender rather than face destruction. But something in Jake's chest rebelled against that idea. Maybe other species could live as slaves, but humans weren't other species. His thoughts were interrupted by an announcement. "All personnel, prepare for presidential address. This message is being broadcast to every human settlement in known space." Jake gathered with his crew in the station's main hall. President John Hayes appeared on the big screen, standing behind his desk in the White House. He looked tired but determined. "My fellow humans," the president began. 3 hours ago, we received a message from an alien empire calling itself the Galactic Hegemony. They have demanded our surrender and our submission to their rule." The room was completely silent. Every person on the station was listening. "I have spent the last few hours consulting with our military leaders, our scientists, and representatives from every human world. We have reviewed their demands carefully. President Hayes paused and looked directly into the camera. Jake felt like the man was speaking directly to him. The answer is no. Jake heard someone gasp. Another person whispered a curse. But most of his crew just nodded. That was the answer Jake had been hoping for. We are human, President Hayes continued. We do not kneel to anyone. We do not surrender our freedom. We do not abandon our children to slavery. The president's voice grew stronger. To the galactic hegemony, we say this. We reject your ultimatum. We choose freedom. If you want to rule us, you will have to fight for it. Jake felt pride swelling in his chest. Around him, his crew was standing straighter, their faces hard, with determination. To every human listening, whether on Earth or the farthest colony, know this. We stand together. We fight together, and we will show this galaxy what it means to be free. The transmission ended. Jake looked around at his crew and saw the same thing in every face. Fear, yes, but also something else. Something the aliens probably didn't understand. Hope. Well, Jake said to his crew, I guess we're going to war. The clock was ticking. 68 hours left until the alien deadline, and Earth had never moved so fast. General Frank Wilson stood in the war room deep beneath Geneva, watching dozens of screens showing military bases across the planet. Every single one was buzzing with activity. Soldiers were loading weapons, engineers were working on ships, and civilians were volunteering faster than the military could process them. General, we have a problem, said Colonel Amy Brooks as she walked up to him. We don't have enough ships. Wilson nodded grimly. Humanity had been exploring space for 200 years, but they had never built a real war fleet. Why would they? The biggest threat had been pirates and the occasional dispute between colonies. Nobody had planned for an alien invasion. How many do we have that can actually fight? Wilson asked. Maybe 300 ships that could hurt something, Brooks replied. The aliens have thousands. Across the city, engineer Katie Bell was working, 18 hours straight in her laboratory. She had been studying the alien transmission, not for the message but for the technology behind it. Every signal carried information about the sender if you knew how to look. Their shields work differently than ours, she explained to her tired team. They're designed to stop energy weapons and kinetic projectiles. But look at this frequency analysis. She pointed to a graph on her computer screen. There's a gap here, a weakness. If we can modify our pulse cannons to fire at exactly this frequency, we might be able to punch through. One of her assistants, a young man named Pete, looked skeptical. Katie, you're talking about rebuilding every weapon we have in 2 days. Then we better get started, Katie said with a grin. Meanwhile, Captain Steve Parker was leading humanity's most dangerous mission. His ship, the UES Explorer, was creeping closer to the massive alien vessel hanging over Earth. His crew was scared, but they had volunteered for this job. Remember, we're not here to fight, Steve told his bridge crew. We're here to learn. Every piece of information we can get might save lives. As they got closer to the alien ship, their sensors started picking up incredible details. The vessel wasn't just a warship. It was a mobile factory, designed to strip planets of their resources and process the populations. Captain, called out his science officer, Lieutenant Dan Clark. I'm reading massive holding areas inside that ship. They're designed to hold millions of people. Steve felt sick. The aliens weren't just planning to conquer humanity. They were planning to ship them off like cargo. And Captain, Dan continued, his voice shaking, I'm detecting similar ships at every human colony. They're not just threatening us. They're ready to harvest us. Back on Earth, the political leaders were making history. Senator Grace Miller stood before the Colonial Assembly, where representatives from every human world had gathered via video link. Mars, Europa, Titan, the asteroid, mining stations, even the distant research outpost near Alpha Centauri. The question before us is simple, Senator Miller announced. Do we stand together or do we fall separately? The response was immediate and unanimous. Every single human colony pledged their support to Earth's decision to resist. Captain Roy, Hughes, speaking from Mars base, put it simply, "We're all human. We all bleed red, and we'll all fight together." As the hours ticked by, something amazing was happening. Humanity was uniting like never before. Old rivalries between Earth and the colonies were forgotten. Political parties that had argued for decades were working side by side. Rich and poor, young and old, everyone was contributing to the war effort. Dr. Alex Carter was working around the clock to understand their enemy. He had been studying every piece of alien technology they could detect, trying to find weaknesses. What he discovered was both encouraging and terrifying. "The hegemony is incredibly advanced," he reported to Admiral Thompson, "but they're also predictable. They've been using the same tactics for thousands of years because they've never needed to change." "What does that mean for us?" Thompson asked. "It means they're not used to fighting someone who fights back," Carter replied. "Every species they've conquered surrendered without a real battle. They don't know how to fight a war." With 12 hours left until the deadline, Admiral Thompson made a decision that would change galactic history. She ordered every human ship, from massive cruisers to tiny mining vessels, to transmit the same message across all frequencies. The message was simple, but it reached every corner of known space. Not just the hegemony fleet, but the thousands of enslaved worlds watching from across the galaxy. To the galactic hegemony, Admiral Thompson's voice rang out clear and strong. "You have demanded our surrender. You have threatened our children. You have promised us slavery." She paused, and in that moment every human in the solar system was listening. "We reject your demands. We refuse your threats. We choose freedom over slavery, dignity over submission, and hope over fear." The transmission continued to reach across space, carrying humanity's words to species that had forgotten what defiance sounded like. "We are human. We bow to no master. We kneel to no emperor. Come and take what you think you can. But know this, we will make you pay for every inch." As the deadline approached, something unprecedented happened. For the first time in galactic history, a species had not only refused the hegemony's ultimatum, but had broadcast that refusal across the entire galaxy. On 1,000 enslaved worlds, populations that had lived under alien rule for generations heard something they thought was impossible. The sound of someone saying no. The hegemony's response came exactly at the deadline. High Commander Vex appeared on every human screen once more, his gray face twisted with anger. "You have chosen destruction," he said. "Your species will be eliminated as an example to others. No one defies the hegemony." But something was different this time. The alien's confidence was shaken. For the first time in his long life, Vex was facing something his empire had never encountered, a species that preferred death to slavery. The war was about to begin. The attack came at dawn. Commander Rick Davis was leading his fighter squadron when space around Earth suddenly filled with alien ships. They came out of nowhere, appearing in flashes of green light like angry stars being born. "Holy hell," whispered his wingman, Lieutenant Carl Brooks, over the radio. "There are hundreds of them." Rick had been flying fighters for 12 years, but he had never seen anything like this. The alien ships moved in perfect formation, like they were dancing to music only they could hear. Every ship knew exactly where to go, exactly what to do. "All fighters, this is command," came Admiral Thompson's voice over the radio. "Remember your training. Stay loose, stay alive, and make them pay for every shot." The first alien fighter that came at Rick was sleek and fast, but it flew like a machine. It approached in a straight line, fired its weapons in a predictable pattern, then turned away in a perfect arc. Rick had fought human pirates who were much more dangerous. He waited until the alien was committed to its attack run, then suddenly rolled his fighter upside down and dropped below the alien's line of fire. The alien pilot seemed confused, like this wasn't supposed to happen. Rick's plasma cannon found its target. The alien fighter exploded in a ball of green fire. "Did you see that?" Carl shouted over the radio. "They fly like robots." Rick was already turning toward his next target. "That's because they probably are robots. Stay unpredictable, people. Don't give them patterns to follow." Across the solar system, the same thing was happening. The aliens had expected to fight a defeated enemy, but instead, they found humans who refused to give up. Captain Lisa Morgan commanded the UES Vigilant, one of Earth's biggest warships. When 3 alien cruisers surrounded her ship, she did something that confused them completely. Instead of trying to escape or fighting to the death, she ordered her crew to rescue the survivors from a damaged human transport ship. "Captain, we're taking heavy fire," her weapons officer reported. "We need to return fire or we'll be destroyed." "Negative," Lisa replied calmly. "Continue rescue operations. All ships have people aboard who want to go home." The alien commanders couldn't understand this. In their empire, individual lives meant nothing. Ships were expendable, crews were replaceable. But humans were risking their most powerful warship to save a few dozen civilians. Lisa's ship took hit after hit, while her crew worked to save every person they could find. When the rescue was complete, she finally ordered her weapons to fire. The alien ships, confused by her strange tactics, were caught off guard by her sudden aggression. Down on the Lunar Research Station, Dr. Sam Foster was monitoring communications from across the galaxy. What he discovered was incredible. "Admiral Thompson," he called over the emergency channel. "You need to hear this. I'm picking up transmissions from dozens of star systems. The enslaved species are watching our battle." Thompson's voice crackled, back over the radio. "What are they saying?" "They're amazed," Sam replied. "I'm getting fragments of conversations in languages I don't recognize, but the computers are translating. They keep saying the same thing. How are they fighting back? How are they still fighting?" For the first time in galactic history, a species was not just resisting the hegemony, but actually winning battles against them. The turning point came when Colonel Amy Brooks led a desperate mission. The main alien ship, the massive vessel that had delivered the original ultimatum, was launching smaller ships to attack Earth cities. Someone had to stop it. "This is a one-way trip," Amy told her assault team as they prepared to board the alien ship. "But if we can take out their command center, we might save millions of lives on Earth." Her team of 20 Marines launched from the battlecruiser UES Defiance in small boarding pods. Half of them were shot down by alien defenses, but Amy and 9 others made it through. Inside the alien ship, they found something that shocked them. The corridors were filled with machines and computers, but very few actual aliens. The ship was almost completely automated. "No wonder they fight like machines," muttered Sergeant Ben Martinez as they fought through the ship's defenses. "They've forgotten how to think for themselves." Amy's team reached the command center and found only 3 aliens controlling the entire massive vessel. When the Marines burst in, the aliens seemed helpless. They had never trained for hand-to-hand combat, because no one had ever gotten this close to them before. Within minutes, Amy's team had taken control of the alien ship's main systems. What they found in the computers was incredible. "Admiral Thompson," Amy reported over her radio. "I'm looking at their battle plans. They expected this fight to last maybe an hour. They have no backup strategies, no alternative tactics. They literally don't know what to do when someone fights back." But the most important discovery came from the ship's communication logs. The hegemony had been sending reports back to their home worlds, and those reports were being intercepted by enslaved species across the galaxy. For thousands of years, the hegemony had told everyone that resistance was impossible. They had convinced entire civilizations that submission was the only way to survive. But now, for the first time, species across the galaxy were seeing the truth. Humans were fighting back, and they were winning. The battle around Earth lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the alien fleet was retreating, leaving behind dozens of destroyed ships. The humans had lost ships too, but they had achieved something incredible. They had won humanity's first battle in a galactic war. As the alien ships disappeared into hyperspace, Admiral Thompson broadcast a message to every human settlement and every alien world that could receive it. "This is Admiral Lisa Thompson of the Earth Defense Force. Today, humanity fought for its freedom and won. To every enslaved species listening across the galaxy, know this: resistance is not impossible. The hegemony can be defeated." She paused, knowing that her words were reaching species that had been slaves for thousands of years. We are human. We refuse to kneel, and we invite anyone who yearns for freedom to stand with us. Across the galaxy, on worlds that had forgotten what hope looked like, populations began to whisper about the impossible species that had said no to the hegemony and lived to tell about it. 3 weeks after the Battle of Earth, the galaxy was changing in ways no one had imagined. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Liberation, watching as his fleet approached the hegemony prison world of Kepler-7. Intelligence reports said 50 million aliens from 12 different species were trapped there, working in the mines that fed the hegemony war machine. "Admiral, we're getting strange readings," reported his communications officer, Lieutenant Sue Parker. "Multiple signals from the planet's surface. They're not distress calls. They're more like messages of hope." Jake smiled. Word of humanity's victory had spread faster than the hegemony could stop it. On world after world, enslaved populations were starting to believe that freedom was possible. "Open a channel to the surface," Jake ordered. "All frequencies." His message was simple but powerful. "This is Admiral Morrison of the Human Defense Force. We're here to set you free." The response from the planet was immediate. Voices in dozens of alien languages, all saying the same thing in different ways. "We've been waiting for you." The liberation of Kepler-7 was unlike any battle the humans had ever fought. The hegemony garrison surrendered without firing a shot when they saw that the prison population had risen up to help the human fleet. For the first time in galactic history, slaves had turned against their masters. Dr. Rachel Green was aboard one of the rescue ships, documenting everything she saw. As a xenobiologist, she had dreamed of meeting alien species, but not like this. The first alien she met was an elderly creature that looked like a cross between a bear and an octopus. His name was Thek, and he had been a slave for 60 years. "Your kind," Thek said in broken English he had learned from intercepted human broadcasts. "You fight back. We forgot how to fight back." Rachel knelt down to speak with him at eye level. "It's not about fighting. It's about believing you deserve to be free." Thek's large eyes filled with tears. "Free. We remember that word, but we forgot what it means." Across the galaxy, the hegemony was discovering that their empire was built on a foundation that was cracking. Species that had been obedient for thousands of years were starting to ask dangerous questions. Commander Tony Miller was leading a secret mission to establish contact with resistance groups forming on hegemony core worlds. His ship, the UES Shadow, used new stealth technology developed from captured alien equipment. "Commander, I'm picking up a transmission," his communications specialist, Ensign Mary Johnson, reported. "It's from the Valix homeworld. They're asking for help." The Valix had been one of the first species conquered by the hegemony 3,000 years ago. They had been model slaves, never causing trouble, never questioning orders, but now they were sending secret messages to the humans. "Tell them we're coming," Tony said, "and tell them to spread the word. Freedom is contagious." Meanwhile, on Earth, the politicians were trying to understand what humanity had started. President Hayes was meeting with representatives from every human colony, trying to figure out how to help the growing rebellion. "The problem," explained Dr. Alex Carter, "is that most of these species don't understand the concept of individual rights. For thousands of years, they've been taught that their only value is what they can produce for the hegemony." Senator Grace Miller leaned forward in her chair. "Then we need to teach them. Every freed world becomes a school for freedom." The hegemony's response was predictable but desperate. They sent their most powerful war fleet, commanded by Supreme Admiral Korth, to crush the human rebellion once and for all. Captain Beth Johnson was commanding the defense of the newly liberated world of New Haven when Korth's fleet arrived. She had expected a massive battle, but what happened instead surprised everyone. "Captain," her scanner operator called out, "I'm reading massive power fluctuations in the enemy fleet. Some of their ships are leaving formation." Beth watched in amazement as nearly half of the hegemony fleet broke away from the main formation. These ships opened fire on their former allies. "What's happening?" Beth asked. The answer came over the communication channel. a voice speaking accented English. "This is Commander Zex of the Hegemony Third Fleet. We surrender to the Human Alliance and request permission to join your fight for freedom." The mutiny had begun. Hegemony crews, many of them from recently conquered species, were turning against their commanders. The idea of freedom was spreading even within the Hegemony military. The Battle of New Haven became the turning point of the war. For every Hegemony ship that fought for the Empire, another fought for freedom. The carefully controlled order that had held the galaxy together for millennia was falling apart. Dr. Sam Foster, monitoring communications from his post on Luna, was recording the most incredible moment in galactic history. "I'm picking up transmissions from over 300 star systems," he reported to Earth Command. "Species that haven't been heard from in thousands of years are declaring independence. The Zelani, the Corvin, the Ashanti people, dozens of others." What amazed Sam most was how quickly the idea spread. Humans had given the galaxy something it had forgotten existed: hope. Captain Steve Parker, now commanding a mixed fleet of human and alien ships, was approaching the Hegemony stronghold world of Terminus Prime. His crew included humans, freed, Valix, former Hegemony soldiers, and representatives from a dozen other species. "All ships, this is Parker," he broadcast to his mixed fleet. "Remember, we're not here for revenge. We're here to offer choice. Anyone who wants to surrender and join us is welcome. Anyone who wants to fight for slavery dies." The response from Terminus Prime was immediate. The planet's defense fleet, made up of ships from 50 different species, sent a single message: "We choose freedom." As the Hegemony's empire crumbled world by world, the remaining Hegemony leadership was facing a reality they had never imagined. Their Supreme Council was meeting an emergency session on their capital world. "How is this possible?" demanded High Counselor Vex, the same alien who had delivered the original ultimatum to Earth. "One primitive species has destroyed an empire that lasted 10,000 years." But the truth was becoming clear to everyone, even the Hegemony leadership. It wasn't humanity's weapons that were destroying their empire. It wasn't their ships or their tactics. It was their ideas. The concept that every individual had worth, that freedom was a right, not a privilege, that beings could govern themselves without masters. These ideas were more powerful than any weapon the Hegemony had ever faced. As Admiral Morrison watched another Hegemony world declare independence, he realized that humanity had done something incredible. They hadn't just won battles. They had started a revolution that was changing the entire galaxy. The age of the galactic hegemony was ending. The age of freedom was beginning. 6 months after humanity first said no to the galactic hegemony, the war was ending in a way nobody had expected. General Chris Anderson stood in the command center on Earth, watching reports come in from across the galaxy. World after world was declaring independence. The hegemony's empire wasn't being conquered. It was simply dissolving as species remembered what freedom meant. "General, we have a priority message from the Hegemony capital world," announced his aide, Captain Mike Torres. "They're requesting a meeting." Chris almost couldn't believe it. The mighty galactic hegemony, rulers of 10,000 worlds, were asking to talk. "What kind of meeting?" Chris asked. "Surrender negotiations, sir." Meanwhile, President Diana Walsh was preparing for something that had never happened before in galactic history. Representatives from over 200 species were gathering on the neutral world of Sanctuary Prime for the first Galactic Assembly of Free Worlds. Diana walked into the massive meeting hall and saw something beautiful. Creatures of every shape and size, from tiny insect-like beings to massive whale-like entities, all sitting together as equals. Some were breathing air, others were in water tanks, and a few existed as energy patterns. But they all had one thing in common. They were all free. "Friends," Diana began, speaking into a translator that carried her words to every species present. 300 days ago, most of you were slaves. Today, you are citizens of free worlds. Tomorrow, we will build something the galaxy has never seen before." The response was incredible. Every species had their own way of showing approval, but the meaning was clear. They wanted to work together, not because they were forced to, but because they chose to. The hegemony's final battle was not fought with weapons. Admiral Paul Wright led a combined fleet of 300 ships representing 40 different species toward the hegemony capital world. But when they arrived, they found something unexpected. The hegemony defense fleet was waiting for them, but they weren't in battle formation. Instead, ship after ship was powering down weapons and broadcasting surrender signals. Admiral Wright came a transmission from the lead hegemony vessel. "This is Fleet Commander Zara. We request permission to join the Free Worlds Alliance." Paul had been expecting a massive battle. Instead, he was watching the last of the hegemony military choose freedom over slavery. "Permission granted," Paul replied. "Welcome to the Free Galaxy." Dr. Kelly Adams was documenting the transformation happening across known space. As humanity's chief historian, she wanted to record every detail of how the galaxy was changing. On world after world, she saw the same thing happening. Species that had been slaves for thousands of years were learning to govern themselves. It wasn't easy. Many had forgotten how to make choices or solve problems without being told what to do. But they were learning. Human advisors were helping, but they weren't giving orders. Instead, they were teaching the most important lesson humanity had, that every being has the right to decide their own fate. The final confrontation came not on a battlefield, but in a courtroom. The surviving hegemony leadership, including High Commander Vex, who had delivered the original ultimatum to Earth, were brought before a galactic tribunal. Captain Lisa Bennett, now serving as humanity's first ambassador to the new Galactic Federation, was chosen to speak for all the free worlds. "We are not here for revenge," Lisa told the court. "We are here to ensure that what happened under the hegemony can never happen again." Vex, still arrogant despite his defeat, spoke from the defendant's chair. "You fools don't understand. Without the hegemony, the galaxy will fall into chaos. Species need masters. Order requires control." Lisa looked at him with something that might have been pity. "You're wrong. You always were wrong. The galaxy doesn't need masters. It needs teachers. It doesn't need control. It needs cooperation." She gestured to the gallery where representatives from hundreds of species sat together in peace. "Look around you. This is what the galaxy looks like when beings are free to choose their own path." The trial lasted 3 weeks. In the end, the former hegemony leaders were not executed or imprisoned. Instead, they were sentenced to something the old empire would never have understood. They were required to spend the rest of their lives helping rebuild the worlds they had destroyed. The new Galactic Federation was founded on principles that humanity had introduced to the galaxy. Every being had inherent worth. Governments existed to serve their people, not rule them. Freedom was not something to be earned, but something every sentient creature was born with. Commander Lisa Bennett stood on the observation deck of the new Federation headquarters, watching ships from 100 different worlds come and go in peace. Children from dozens of species played together in the gardens below, their parents working side by side to build a better future. "Hard to believe it all started with one word," said Dr. Alex Carter, joining her at the window. "What word?" Lisa asked. "No," Alex replied. "When the hegemony demanded we surrender, humanity said no. That one word changed everything." Lisa nodded, thinking about how far they had all come. It wasn't just the word. It was what the word meant. It meant we believed we were worth fighting for. The final scene played out on Earth, where a monument was being built to honor all those who had died fighting for freedom. The inscription was simple, written in over 300 languages. "To those who chose to stand rather than kneel, who chose hope over fear, and who proved that freedom is the birthright of every living being." As Lisa read the words, she thought about humanity's gift to the galaxy. It wasn't their weapons or their ships or their technology. It was much simpler and much more powerful. Humanity had taught the galaxy how to say no to tyranny and yes to freedom. The galactic hegemony was gone, forever. In its place stood something beautiful. A galaxy where every species could choose their own destiny, where cooperation replaced domination, and where the simple human concept of individual dignity had become the foundation of galactic civilization. The age of slavery was over. The age of freedom had begun. On distant worlds that had been prisons for thousands of years, children who had never known what choice meant were learning to make decisions for themselves. Former slaves were becoming teachers, showing others how to live free. And at the center of it all, the small blue world that had started it all continued to spin peacefully in space, home to the species that had looked at the most powerful empire in galactic history and simply said, "No, we refuse to kneel. The galaxy would never be the same." And that was exactly what humanity had intended.